Welcome back everybody to another MOTOBOB video. You join us at Motorcycle Live, the biggest and best motorcycle show in the UK. And right now we're at the Ducati stand and we're going to look at the best new bikes for 2023 in price order ascending. And this one gets Expensivo. Now, as the entry point into the whole Ducati lineup, we've got the Scramblers, and this is quite a big update for 2023. Firstly, you've got the new styling, so you'll notice that things like the tank and the tail section, the side panels, even the shape of the wheels, they're all different for this year. And it just makes it look that little bit more modern, a bit less like the original Scrambler, which this lineup is meant to reference, but I think probably it was due a little bit of a facelift. Now, the engine, the suspension, the brakes are all the same for this year, but they have changed the frame and they've managed to take 4 kilograms off the total curb weight, which is pretty impressive. It was already one of the lightest retro bikes and it's definitely cemented its place there. But I think the biggest update is the tech. It was previously a very basic bike, but now it gets a TFT display with phone connectivity, different layouts, and through that you can manage the new ride-by-wire throttle, and that opens up different power modes, different traction control maps. You've got cornering ABS still as well, so it's really dragged it up to the modern day in terms of tech. The only downside being the price. When this bike was introduced, it was like 8 grand, you know, quite a few years ago. Now it's more like 10, and there's a lot of other good bikes you can get for that money, but it is a Ducati, and some people I think will still be willing to pay it. Oh, and there's a lot of new color updates for this year. I think there's like 8 different color choices. They don't have them here, but when we were at EICMA, they had them all on the wall, and so if you want something that's a little bit different from the Ducati lineup as to the regular red or black, the Scrambler definitely offers the full rainbow. Now over here for an extra £1,000 we've got the full throttle. Now this bike was previously in the Scrambler lineup, disappeared for a while, now it's back, and the idea is that it references the American flat tracker scene, so much more vibrant colors. You've got these number boards on the side as well, and also a little bit of a different spec, so slightly different bodywork, things like a smaller front mudguard, and also the Termini exhaust, which really does look very nice on this model. So quite a lot of visual tweaks for your £1,000, maybe not that different to ride apart from the slightly lower handlebars. And then at the other end over here we've got the NIGHTSHIFT, so again 10995, but this takes a more old school stance, so spoke wheels, brown leather tuck and roll style seat. It's got pretty much flat handlebars with bar end mirrors, but my favorite thing about it is the paintwork. It's got this really nice blue metallic flake in it, and of course that deep blue suits the name NIGHTSHIFT. Now next up, for just shy of 14 grand, we've got the Monster SP. This is a new version, so you already had the base Monster, and then there was the Monster Plus, which got a little bit of extra bodywork, but this takes the performance up quite a big notch. So proper good Öhlins fork to give you premium suspension. Brakes are from Brembo style lemma, so again top-notch stuff. You've got all the lean sensitive rider aids you could need, and a MotoGP inspired livery. The only thing is, at about 14 grand, you're getting very close to the STREETFIGHTER V2, which is a lot of bike for your buck in comparison, certainly in terms of peak power. But maybe that's the good thing about the Monster SP. It offers that premium spec of chassis, but maybe not quite as intimidating. It makes 111 horsepower peak, which I think most of us can get on with. Now next up, at just shy of 15 grand, we've got the Desert X. Now this is a fully capable off-road biased adventure bike, so it goes head to head with stuff like the KTM 890, the Tiger 900 Rally, and so of course you get all the stuff like the semi-knobbly tires, the 21-inch front, the 18 rear, long travel suspension, plenty of off-road bias riding modes. But the thing is, it was only announced last year, so it wasn't really due a big update. The only thing is you can get a new color option. Quite fancy it is as well. It's inspired by the Audi RSQ e-tron, which is a Dakar car that won like 4 stages last year. Of course, Audi own Ducati, and so that's why that graphical scheme has trickled down onto this bike. Not this one, this is the last year's white version, but I'll put a picture on the screen now.
Now, before we get onto the next bike, I'd just like to say a massive thanks to Quadlock for sponsoring this video. Quadlock make the best motorcycle phone mounts in the business, and I've been using them for years now, so I'm absolutely chuffed to have them sponsoring the channel. They've got a wide range of mounts to fit pretty much any style of bike, and a big selection of compatible phone cases. Not only is their Quadlock buckle super secure, but it also makes it simple to mount and dismount your phone, even when you're wearing motorcycle gloves. pounds. Plus, there's a whole bunch of extra accessories to add even more functionality. I'm using their vibration dampener to keep my phone safe from engine vibes, plus the wireless charging head to keep my phone juiced up without having to plug it in, and then also their USB smart adapter to hook it up to the bike's battery without ever running it flat. Honestly, this is the best system I've tried for motorcycle phone mounting, so do check out the links down in the description where you can find out more. Plus, there's a 10% discount code specifically for my viewers. So once again, a massive thanks to Quadlock for their support.
So things start getting a little pricey from here on in, and actually all of the bikes from here upwards are V4s. So this is the STREETFIGHTER V4, got a decent update for this year. It costs just shy of 22 grand and then 23 grand for the V4S, I believe. And yeah, there are plenty of interesting little tweaks for this year. So it's not great on fuel, this engine, so it's got a slightly bigger fuel tank for this year. There are some little tweaks to the geometry as well, so a slightly different head angle, and then lots of changes to the electronics. So things like a new wet mode, different power modes that are specific to each gear, revised engine braking settings, and they've also updated the quick shifter, so everything should just be that little bit tighter. But I think for me, this is the S version that gets the semi-active Öhlins suspension and the forged lightweight wheels, and it now comes in this grey Nero paint job, which I really like on this bike, almost as much as I like that khaki green STREETFIGHTER V2 over there. I think that looks very nice indeed. Now join me over here because we've got the new MULTISTRADA V4 Rally. This gets a 30-litre fuel tank, so it goes directly head-to-head with the long-range adventure bikes like the BMW R1250 GS Adventure and then the Tiger 1200 Explorer models from Triumph. Thing is, it's not quite as good on fuel, so despite the fact that it does get the 30-litre fuel tank, you won't get quite as much range as those two bikes, but it does get a few extra features that should make it a really good long-distance bike. So it's got a longer subframe now, so more space for the passenger. The top box is mounted a little further back. I believe there's bigger rubbers in the foot pegs as well to make them more comfortable. They've revised the aerodynamics package as well so that there's better wind protection, but there's a couple of little things that interest me about this bike, and they're the techie features. So previously it already got rear cylinder deactivation. With a V4 like this, you've got two cylinders up front and then two under the saddle. So if you're at a standstill in warm weather, you know, that's really going to warm up the seat and therefore your crotch, and that's going to be pretty uncomfortable. So the bike and some other bikes like this, like Indians, get rear cylinder deactivation. When it's at a standstill, that rear cylinder switches off, or the rear two on the V4, and then the front two keep it spinning, and then as soon as you touch the throttle and move off, it kicks back in. Now this bike, as a new advancement, gets rear cylinder deactivation at low speeds. So if you're just traveling in the city at like 5 to 10 miles per hour or something like that, it'll still just run off the two front cylinders, which I think is really interesting. I don't think I've seen it before on any other bike. Plus, another thing I've never seen on any other bike is Easy Lift. It's called the Easy Lift system. So when the bike is on the side stand and you switch it on, it'll actually soften up the suspension, which allows the bike to sag a little, and that means you can pick it up off the stand a little easier, which for a big tall bike like this, potentially with a bit of luggage on it, and it also does come in pretty heavy anyway, it might be a very useful feature. Now join me over here, we've got the DIAVEL V4, and at EICMA in Milan, I didn't even get a video of this because it was just so busy. It's a super popular bike, everybody wants to see it, and you can totally understand why. It does look very impressive. So the previous gen DIAVEL had a 1260 V-twin. This bike gets the V4 Gran Turismo, which is the same engine as the MULTISTRADA we just looked at, but the thing that might surprise you about it is it doesn't really bring any massive performance advantages. There is a little bit more peak power, but there's actually less peak torque. The thing that it does bring though is it allows them to ditch the steel trellis frame, and that means it's quite a lot lighter. I believe the dry weight for the V4 DIAVEL is 13 kilograms lighter than the previous gen 1260 V-twin version. So yeah, it'll probably be quite a lot quicker in a straight line, and they've done a pretty amazing job of the styling package as well. Specifically the tail light at the rear, and then also the quad exit exhaust, which just looks, I mean, it's not exactly like the last word in taste, but this bike is meant to be a bit brash and garish, so I think it suits the overall vibe. Now next up, and the price is really getting pretty silly here, so £38,995 for this, the Panigale V4R. Now this is their homologation special that allows them to race it in World Superbikes, and they say that a lot of the tech and a lot of the design thinking trickles down from their World Superbike and MotoGP programs. In fact, they say it's the closest Ducati that you can get to like a proper race bike that you can currently buy and ride on the road, and it does look mega impressive. massive. The power numbers are absolutely nuts on this thing. So I believe it's 218 horsepower in stock form, but if you come around here, you'll see that the Akropovich race exhaust system, it's an accessory fit, it probably costs thousands, but that takes it up to something like 237 horsepower. And then if you get the Shell oil that's specifically designed for this bike and shove that in the engine, it'll make another 3.5 horsepower. So that makes it 240.5 horses. That is absolutely bonkers. Now there are some updates to the tech which are similar to the Street Fighter we just mentioned. There are some tweaks to the geometry, but I think it's that headline peak power figure that's really going to help this bike sell, plus the looks. I mean, look at this thing. It has to be the most desirable sports bike currently on the market. Maybe this or the MV Agusta Super Veloce 1000 that was announced like a couple of weeks ago. Let me know which one you prefer down in the comments. But almost unbelievably, that Panigale V4R isn't the most expensive bike in the Ducati lineup for this year, and it's the Lamborghini edition of the Street Fighter V4. Lots of little design tweaks and extra parts that just make it super duper premium, and you can find out about all of them in the video that I made about it a few weeks ago, which I'll link to here. That's the full details on this bike, and the price is in there, which is just astonishing.